throw. One-on-one. Davis has it. Touchdown. Carolina wins. Carolina is the Coastal Division champion. Javonte Williams to the left of Howe. He'll send him out into the flat right side. Howe looking, standing tall, lets it go. Man there. Touchdown. Touchdown, Carolina. The pistol. Jackson behind him. Hands off to Jackson. He tried a jump pass, and it's intercepted. Surratt intercepts it. Holy cow, Carolina's going to win. And off to Javonte Williams again. Pops it to the left. Javonte leaps over a man, crosses the 50, trucks over a defender, spins by another. Goodness gracious, he's down to about the 15, and he did absolutely everything in one carry.
Here's the shotgun snap to Aguilar. Drops back. Pressure coming. Aguilar floats it up. Incomplete. No flags. Head on back up the mountain. Carolina wins it in double overtime.
Loftus out of the shotgun. Throws to the end zone.
Incomplete. Incomplete. The bell belongs to us. Carolina wins it. 47-45 in double overtime.
Bernard fields it at the 26. Heading to the far side. Gio at the 35. Gio, he's at the 50. No, he's not. Yes, he is. Gio is going to take it for a touchdown. Are you kidding me?
What's going on, guys? Welcome into another edition of the Heel Tough Blog Podcast. It's your host, Anthony Pagnotta, here with you guys as always. And tonight, talking a little bit of Tar Heel football because yet again, Carolina has lost a huge piece of their defense to the transfer portal. That's right, Amare Campbell heading to the transfer portal for the second time this offseason. The first time entered because he didn't know who his head coach was going to be. Now he definitely knows who his head coach is, and he is still entering the portal and looking to go elsewhere. So we'll talk about that situation. What do we make of that? And ultimately, what do we think this means for this roster in general? Carolina losing two of its best defensive players now to the portal here in the last handful of days. So we'll talk about that on this edition of the show. We'll, of course, update you on the guys that Carolina has landed out of the transfer portal, which is not many contributors. A lot of guys that look to just be depth pieces for Carolina, which, look, Carolina needs depth on this roster. There's no doubt about that. But they also need guys that can contribute at certain positions. So we'll talk about that. J.J. Jones was in court earlier today, along with three former Duke players as they were suing the NCAA. We'll tell you what happened with that and what now awaits for J.J. Jones as he tries to get a fifth year of eligibility at Carolina. And also the Tar Heels are heading overseas for their 2026 opener. We're going to tell you about Carolina getting ready to go to Dublin, Ireland to start next season, what we think of that, and are we going? Is that something that we can potentially reveal here on this edition of the podcast tonight? So all of that coming up. But as I mentioned, the big news that we have to start off with here today, man, Amare Campbell in the transfer portal for the second time this offseason. And he entered the last time. We thought, okay, Carolina got him back. Now they're going to be able to hold on to him. He goes through spring practice and, even the opening of the transfer portal. And we thought, okay, Carolina is safe. They have been able to hold on to him at least, even though they haven't been able to hold on to Bo Atkinson. Now today, he announces he's going to enter the transfer portal, says that this is what's best for him and his family. I think that really means that he is another guy that's looking to go somewhere where he can, one, make a lot of money, and two, can also win at a high level. And so Carolina's in a position now where it looks like they've lost their two biggest pieces on the defensive side of the ball to the transfer portal. First of all, what do you make of this transfer? And, ultimately, how in the world can Carolina be letting this happen where two of their top defensive players are in the portal now, and it doesn't seem like there's even any sort of effort to keep either one of these guys?
Yeah, this is where the lack of transparency from the program is a real deficit to those of us that cover the program and fans, because we don't know if this was something that was this a financial reason. I think that's a big part of it. We know what the schools that Bo Atkinson has been contacted by. He got crystal balled, I think, to go to Ohio State earlier today. You're not going to play there unless you're getting a significant amount of money. Be interested to see where Amare Campbell lands, but when you're talking about doing what's best for your family, a lot of times that is meant in a financial situation. And that means that he's probably already been offered a significant pay increase to go play linebacker somewhere else. And so what this really brings into question is, where was the money that was reported to be committed to the program when Belichick got hired?
Mm-hmm.
Because we got told upon the hiring, and if you remember when you go back to the process, what was the last thing that really stood in the way of the hire? It was the NIL money. And how much money was he going to have at his disposal to build the roster? He wanted $20 million. It was reported that Carolina was going to have that available. Well, if that's the case, I find it hard to believe that Bo Atkinson and Amare Campbell leave the program, because I don't think I don't look at it as a situation where these guys aren't fits in the defense. Like, I think those are two guys that they're so important from a leadership standpoint, even if they're not exactly what you're looking for when you're trying to establish your culture, like Bill Belichick is. Then you put up with that for one season. So this is a big loss, man. Like, I know there's this rhetoric that these are not great football players because they played on a bad defense. I disagree with that. I think you're losing, two guys that, from a leadership standpoint, were going to be very impactful, and two guys that I thought under Bill Belichick's coaching and Steve Belichick's system were poised to be big-time contributors and be a big reason why, if the defense took a step forward, they would be the two names we talked about as much as any guy on that side of the football. So, it's another blow for Carolina, because, as you mentioned, we'll talk about these guys in a minute, they're not making up for these losses in the portal. Like, they're bringing in guys that are depth pieces, maybe some guys that have some upside in the years to come, but they have nowhere near made up for what they've lost in the portal with what they've brought in. And, I do think that it's going to have to make us reevaluate our expectations of what this team can do on the football field come later this fall.
Yeah, I think that's certainly something that you're going to have to do, because, you've lost two of your most talented players. And the thing that I love is what you said, is that there are a lot of people that are trying to tell us that these guys are not great players, that they really didn't do anything. They played on a bad defense. So how can they really be great football players? You can have really good football players that are stuck on a bad defense, that are in a bad scheme. We have seen that for years at Carolina, where there are guys that are good football players. So you're telling me that Cedric Gray was a terrible football player. You're telling me that Kamen Rucker, bad football player. No, those are guys that were key pieces to what Carolina was doing. And I want you to look back, because I remember what everybody was saying about Kamen Rucker when he got injured last season. If Bill Belichick had told him, we're moving on from you, what would you have thought about that move? Would you still be acting the same way that you're acting right now and say, guys, you can criticize Bill Belichick and what he's doing here. This does not have to be, well, Belichick's all-knowing. Belichick is this great. No, Belichick is really messing up here with some of the stuff that he's doing right now. I think this is a mistake to let Amare Campbell walk. You've got enough money to be able to pay these guys. I think what it is, as somebody pointed out to me in one of the group chats that I'm in, they said it's probably that they have a number on him, and they feel like, because, it's like the NFL, they're not willing to go above a certain number for a guy. If that guy wants more money, then they're just not willing to renegotiate. That doesn't make any sense. You have to be willing to renegotiate in this era of college football. This is just how it works. And with a guy like Amare Campbell, with a guy like Bo Atkinson, those are guys that are talented enough. You look at what Amare Campbell did last year. You could make the argument that he was this defense's, potentially the defense's best player. I mean, 76 total tackles, 11 tackles for loss, 6.5 sacks. He had 22 quarterback pressures. I think it was either 22 or 23 quarterback pressures last year. I mean, that is a significant loss for this Carolina defense. And I know that everybody is pivoting now and saying, well, we had Andrew Simpson on campus, the transfer from Boise State. Well, first of all, we're sitting here at 9:00 on the day that he visited, and he is not committed to Carolina. He's still got a bunch of other teams that are after him in the transfer portal. So can you guarantee me that you're bringing in a guy to replace him and that is going to be the guy? Because to me, that's still a bit of a downgrade. You're getting a group of 5 player that's coming up to the Power 5 level. You look at the way that he performed in the most important games that he played, and against Penn State, pretty solid. But you go back to the Oregon game, really struggled at certain times in that game, had some issues with missed tackles. I mean, missed 21.4% of his tackle attempts a year ago. That's one area where he is not better than Amare Campbell. And Carolina is going to need a guy that can tackle at a really high level in the middle of this defense because of all that they are lacking in the middle of this defensive line right now. So, I mean, I don't know. Maybe we're just crazy and we just don't understand, good football players when we see them. But I don't understand how you can look at the way that Amare Campbell played his ass off for the last 2 years when he was out there for Carolina, and look at the way that Bo Atkinson played when he was on the field for Carolina, which we agree he wasn't on there enough because they wasted a lot of their time trying to break Des Evans out of his shell and become the guy that he was when he was at the high school level when they recruited him. I just don't understand how we're being seen as the people that are crazy, and that everybody looks at this as Belichick and his staff just saying that, oh, you guys simply aren't good enough for this defense.
Yeah, this is the issue when you hire a guy like Bill Belichick that has 8 Super Bowl championship rings, the greatest defensive football mind we've ever seen. When you hire him to be your program, is that, and look, this is coming from a guy that between the two of us bought in on the hire quicker and has supported the hire at every turn. But you can look at how this roster has gotten worse in the last 2 weeks and be open to being critical of the head coach. Because whether it's a number, we know that Michael Lombardi, one of his tasks as a GM is to manage the cap. Like, there are some guys that even Bill Belichick overpaid for at the NFL level because you just simply had to. These are 2 guys in particular that if they wanted to renegotiate, and this is what really sucks about the spring transfer window, but if those guys wanted to renegotiate, you need to be willing to go back to the drawing board and give them more money. Just from a leadership and a culture standpoint, like the production is almost secondary for just how important I think those guys could have been on the field leadership wise for a head coach that's adjusting to life at the college level. And now these 2 guys are gone. So, I've been very patient with Belichick while us not having the transfer portal haul we expected back in the winter. We're not having what we expected right now here in the spring, albeit there being, quite a handful of good football players to go portaling. But he hasn't done the one thing I thought he was for sure going to do in his first 6 months on the job. I thought he was going to make the roster better. Like, I thought we would come out of spring practice, get ready for, the summer, and we could look at the roster and say, yeah, this is a better roster than what Mac Brown left him with. That's not the case right now. And look, maybe his coaching expertise does show up, and maybe, hopefully he has not lost his fastball, and, maybe the guys that they've brought in are better fits for the defense, and these guys shine. But as of right now, I'm mentally preparing to see the same old defense I've seen from Carolina the majority of my life as a fan, which means they'll probably look great in week 1, maybe good in week 2, but then from week 3 on, all hell will break loose, And we'll be sitting here wondering what this defense could look like if Bo Atkinson and Amare Campbell were on the football field.
Yep, I think you're 100% right about that. Ken May says on Facebook, you guys think you know more than what the staff knows. Yeah, I'm starting to think that I might, to be real honest with you. Is it possible that the portal linebackers are just as good, maybe better? Which portal linebackers are you talking about? Because Kamori House has a chance to be a really good player. Kamori House last season was nowhere near as productive as Amare Campbell was. And the thing about House is that he is a basically converted linebacker or converted safety that's playing linebacker. He's a hybrid type of player. So yes, he is going to be a really good coverage safety, but is he going to be a guy that can help you stop the run the way that you're going to need to, because your defensive line is not going to be able to stop the run? And I can tell you right now, I don't care what the staff says. I know more than the staff does when it comes to this. The way this defensive line is built right now at this moment, they ain't stopping anything. I'm telling you, they are way too small. You have guys that are going to be playing massive roles like Rodney Laura that simply are not good enough, and you have zero depth on the defensive line. And you think that that is going to allow you to have success and win games? I don't think so. So you need a linebacking core that's up to the challenge. And look, right now, hey, you may be right. Andrew Simpson might be a better fit for this defense. And this might be something that the staff knows better. Personally, I don't think that right now, looking at the stats, looking at the two guys, I think that Andrew Simpson is a better linebacker than Amare Campbell. I thought Amare Campbell had the potential to be one of, if not the best linebacker in this conference. And if you're one of the best linebackers in this conference, you're one of the best linebackers in the entire country. I think that is still going to be the case wherever he ends up landing. I don't know if Carolina has a guy on the roster that's going to be able to do that, even if Andrew Simpson comes here. But the thing is that Andrew Simpson is not here. He has not committed to Carolina. So you really think that Mekhi Bayor, the guy that they got that was a transfer linebacker from Missouri who previously played at Nebraska and transferred to Missouri earlier this offseason, you really think that's the guy that's going to be the solution? First of all, this is a guy that's never played more than 375 snaps in his career. He's a guy that played a lot of weak side linebacker, not middle linebacker. He sort of bounced back and forth. And if you go back to last year and you look at the numbers that he put up, 49 total tackles, 6 tackles for loss, and 1 sack. If that is the guy that is starting alongside of Kamori House when you start week 1, this defense is way weaker than if Amare Campbell was in there. I'm sorry. You can't show me any stats that are going to prove that that's wrong to me. So, yeah, now, to me, this is another hole that now you open up on this team, because when you look at where it's at, and here's the other thing. Some people are saying that this move and the move of getting rid of Bo Atkinson or letting him walk is part of the culture change, and that this is what is needed in Chapel Hill. My thing about that is if that's the case, why did you wait this long? You should have let Amare Campbell, when he went into the transfer portal, you should have told him the minute that you were hired, dude, we want you out of here. We're trying to overhaul this entire roster. You should have told Bo Atkinson before he went through spring practice, Bo, we don't think you fit what we want to do here. We need you out because we need some new leaders in this room that are going to be our guys. Okay, then I understand it. That's what Deion Sanders did when he came into Colorado. He told them, most of the people that I'm talking to here today will not be a part of this roster when come the end of the winter portal cycle. And you had time when you got there, the portal was still open. You could have told these guys, hey, you need to go ahead and enter the transfer portal. Why are they now backtracking and doing this in the spring when they should have been doing that in that winter cycle? That's what doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, it leads you to believe, it's why I think it's first and foremost a financial component. There are some guys that simply have left this program because they can't handle the way Belichick's going to coach them. And we're talking about, this is a different Bill Belichick. This isn't the guy that was in New England acting and carrying himself the way that he is. He is, I think, a lot more relaxed and a lot more mellow, but is still very demanding. And that's a complete 180, hell, more like a 360 from where they were dealing with last year, and what they've dealt with for guys that have been here under Mac Brown, who was as player friendly as you were going to get. But I don't look at this as a guy that could not handle the demands of a Bill Belichick. Like Amare Campbell, to me, is a guy that I think would embrace that and would want to be challenged, because he probably was sitting there thinking to himself, damn, I'm a really good individual player. But no one can see that because I play on defense that gives up 45 points and 500 yards every week. Like, I think he was excited about playing for this great defensive mind that could maybe help Carolina's defense just be average. Because if they were average, Amare Campbell was going to be the biggest reason why, I think, alongside Bo Atkinson. And look, I know the two transfers from Washington, I think, are going to be really good for Carolina, and they're going to play, and I think at a high level. But there was something there that made you believe that Campbell was ready to really take that next step. And so, and the fact that he entered the portal, Belichick gets hired, he comes back, we go through the spring, and now he's portaling again. Not a good look for Belichick and his staff. And so, they say they want to carry themselves as the 33rd NFL team, and they've kind of carried around themselves as if they know more, even though this is the staff's and a lot of these guys first time working at the college level. But the fact that the roster is not as good as it was even 2 weeks ago is a bad reflection. And we'll have to see. We'll have to see what happens. Maybe they nail out a few more guys in the portal as we move along, and maybe the guys that they've brought in are better fits. Maybe less is more. I don't know, but as optimistic as I was about where I thought this defense could go in 2025, let's say 4 months ago, that optimism is nowhere near as high as we sit here tonight.
Yeah, I mean, my expectations for the season have gone down. I'll tell you that much. I think, especially with where this defense is at right now, I mean, it's hard not to see this team as one that probably finishes 6-6, maybe 7-5 at its best, because this defense is just going to be such a liability. Where are the star players on this defense? You've got maybe Price Yates is that guy on the defensive line. But the thing about it is that if he doesn't have anybody that takes attention away from him on that defensive line, then he's going to be gobbled up and he's going to be shut down. You've got no stars at the linebacker position. Not that I know of right now. Again, Kamori House could end up developing into that guy, but I'm not ready to call him a star player. And then who do you have in the secondary? We really like what we've heard about Thaddeus Dixon, but we haven't even heard that much about him. So we don't really know who the stars are. This is where the lack of transparency from the program really hurts, because this defense could have guys that have stepped up and, are ready to play big roles, but we don't know about them. I'm going to tell you from what I saw when I was out there a couple of Saturdays ago, I don't think this defense is anywhere near where it needs to be. They did not dominate the offense, and that not to the point where you would be able to say losing a guy like Bo Atkinson, who, by the way, was a standout in that game, and Amare Campbell, this group is ready to go. I don't see that. I think these are two losses that were probably unexpected by this staff, and now they are scrambling. And I think it's left them with some major holes. And in terms of my concern level with where the roster stands right now, I mean, yeah, I think it's okay to be a little panicked. I would say it's okay to be at probably a 6 or a 7 on a scale of 10, a scale to 10, because I mean, yeah, I think this group, you were hoping that they would be competitive in year one. You were thinking that this roster was going to be in a good enough spot to where you would be able to compete in year one. The way that they're sitting right now, I mean, I don't know about you. I don't feel like they are in position to compete in year one with where this roster is at, just across the board, but especially on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, no, for all the talks we were talking about, were 9-10 wins available with the schedule, and all that talk about dark horse for a playoff. Maybe they make it to Charlotte. I think all that's gone out the window, and I think you really got to just kind of reevaluate to where if this team makes a bowl game, I think you got to be satisfied. If Belichick is here for the long haul, I don't think that's the worst thing in the world. Like if he's really coming in here, overhauling, the culture, and setting the new standard. Okay, this is, then, and I've talked about this year is really to build for next year. Okay, no harm, no foul. As much as I believe in Belichick and I want him here for the next 3 to 5 years, I can't say that's going to happen. And so, if this team goes 6-6, and let's say, Dallas, whatever, becomes available in the NFL next offseason and he bolts, then we'll be looking back at this as just kind of, it would basically be a mistake, because you didn't get the best hire in the short term or the long term. So, and yeah, it just all around sucks, man. Like from where we were when he got hired, even into the initial stuff in the offseason back in early January, where there was as much excitement that we've seen around the program in the offseason in our 15 plus years. Like a lot of that's been zapped. Like a lot of that's been taken away. Now, if they come out and they win in the fall, then all the things we're sitting here complaining about right now become irrelevant, and we'll look like idiots. But I think with the way some things have unfolded so far, I don't see. I mean, 8-4 would be, him being an AC Coach of the Year. 9-3 would be like a legitimate one of the best coaching jobs in the country type of thing. So, we'll have to see. They've been very aggressive in the spring portal, but as I mentioned, I don't think the roster is getting better with the guys that they're adding, and it's just hard for me to fathom that in his 4.5, 5+ months on the job, the one thing I can say definitively is that the roster has gotten worse. And that's a real damning thing to say when you hired a guy of his status and you thought you were going to have players left and right flocking to play for a guy like Bill Belichick.
Yeah, and I mean, the other thing is you look at the sheer numbers of guys that are coming in and going out. I mean, Carolina with 26 incoming transfers to 43 outgoing transfers. And just in the spring window alone, that's really where you've lost a lot of guys. And look, that 43 number, it puts in, some guys that are non-scholarship athletes. These are guys that are, that were walk-ons and stuff like that. But I mean, still, in this window alone, you've lost 17 guys that are scholarship players. I'll run through them real quick here in case you missed any of them. Defensive end, Bo Atkinson. Defensive back, Zion Ferguson. Offensive lineman, Zach Rice. Linebacker, Cade Law. Linebacker, Cruz Law. Defensive end, Malachi Hamrick. Kicker/punter, Lucas Osada. Wide receiver, Gavin Blackwell. Quarterback, Ryan Brown. Kicker, Liam Boyd. Kicker, Jaffer Murphy. Wide receiver, Christian Hamilton. Defensive lineman, Joel Starlings. Tight end, Julian Randolph. Kicker, Adam Samaha. Offensive lineman, Desmond Jackson. Defensive lineman, Terry Nwabusi Ezeala. And linebacker, Amare Campbell. So you've got two headliners that are gone out of that group. You've got a defensive lineman that was in his first semester with Carolina that has entered the transfer portal already. That was one of the guys that he brought in. He's already entered the transfer portal. And you look at some of the teams that are going after him, all of them are group of five guys or a group of five teams. And that was one of the better defensive linemen that Carolina brought in this class. So if you're thinking that, oh, well, the group that Carolina is bringing in, in the summer potentially is going to have some guys that are better along the defensive line, you are sadly mistaken. That group is the group of guys that they're bringing in the summer. I mean, if one of those guys has to contribute for you, you are in dire, dire straits. They are simply are not. I mean, there's one guy that maybe could contribute right away just because of the size that he has. But even he's only 270 pounds. He would still have to put on a lot of weight. I like the physicality that he played with, but I still think Nico Maggio would take a little bit more time. Carolina is not finding any sort of game changers in the portal either. I mean, you look at the 7 guys that they've landed here in this part of the portal. The only game-changing guy is Gio Lopez. That's it. Everybody else is looked at as depth pieces. I know that some people are thinking, well, now that Bo Atkinson is gone, does that mean that Smith Vilbert, the guy that Carolina picked up out of Penn State, is he going to be the guy that steps up in that spot? I mean, you're talking about a guy that was never more than a rotational piece. He played the same amount of snaps as a guy like Bo Atkinson did and had not even half of the production that you saw from Bo Atkinson. I mean, this past year, he played, almost the same amount of snaps as Atkinson did. He had 12 total tackles the whole season, 4 tackles for loss, and 1.5 sacks. So the talent level on this roster is simply nowhere near where it needs to be. The guys that Carolina's added since the last time that we talked to you guys about who they were adding in the portal, they added a kicker, and they needed to add a kicker because they literally got rid of every single kicker that was in camp with them in the spring. Reese Verhoff, the transfer from Marshall, you go back and look at how he's performed, 3-year starter. As a true freshman in 2022, hit 33 of his 35 extra points and went 13 of 20 on his field goal attempts. Followed that up in 2023 by nailing all 32 of his extra point attempts, but he hit just 11 of his 18 field goal attempts. And then this past season as a junior, he once again hit every extra point that he looked at, but hit 14 of his 19 field goals. So his best year came this past season. But that's still one of the guys that I think you're bringing into that kicking room. You'd like to have more competition for him because that shouldn't be the guy that automatically gets the job. Now, you're bringing in a true freshman here in the summer that'll join you guys in Gaetano Bartholomew. Maybe he's a guy that challenges him right away out of the gate. But, I mean, are we sure that that's really an upgrade? I mean, we never really got to see what Liam Boyd was able to do. I would have liked to keep at least one other kicker in that room. It feels like that approach is very similar to what they do in the NFL when they cut kickers and just bring one in. You can't do that with a college roster. You can't kick all of the guys off the team, say we're redoing the whole room and we're just going to bring in one guy. No, you've got to bring in multiple guys. You then look at the other additions that Carolina's made. 2 positions that one of them, I think wide receiver is a position of need. They bring in Dayton Sneed, who is a guy that has caught 2 passes in his college career for 19 yards. And really the only reason they brought him in was because this is a guy that can get you a 2026 commitment from his brother, Carson Sneed, who's a 4-star tight end. That's the only reason it feels like Carolina did this. I don't know how much of a contributor he's going to be. He was an unranked prospect coming out of high school. So who knows really what his upside could potentially be. That's one you're going to have to wait and see on. You would have liked that they had gotten someone that had a little bit more experience. And then Benjamin Hall coming in out of the transfer portal at running back, carried the ball 15 times for 69 yards over the course of 3 games in 2023, which was solid, nothing great. But then this past year, as a redshirt freshman, carried the ball 29 times for just 72 yards, an average of 2.5 yards per carry. Now, I get it. This is a guy that transfers in from Michigan. Michigan known to have great running backs. Maybe this ends up being a fit for Carolina. But, I mean, these are guys, like, you're spending your money on a backup running back when you have major holes on the rest of this roster. I mean, that's what kind of frustrates me, is that it doesn't seem like there's any sort of buzz around Carolina with the spots that we need to be talking about, like defensive line, like edge rusher, and like linebacker now.
Yeah. The guys that they've brought in so far in the portal outside of Gio Lopez, you're basically banking on upside and maybe and it does feel like some of the guys they're targeting, they're coming from these power conference programs like a Tennessee, like a Michigan, and they think that we're going to accept that. Well, they're recruiting guys from big programs that have recently gone to the playoff or won a national championship, but they're not guys that were the reason why those programs were winning. There's not production that's being brought in, that's being added. So you can't even really set an expectation level for a Snead or for Hall. So we'll have to see, where they continue to go. If the longer the portal goes, maybe some more guys of consequence enter the portal, but it just feels like for whatever reason, and we referenced this report last week from John Talty of CBS Sports, like as much as Carolina talked about having money at their disposal, it does feel like Belichick and Lombardi have been reluctant to spend.
Yep.
And if you're going to bring in difference makers, and that's what this roster needs, like, yeah, you need you need depth, but this team needs difference makers. This team needs guys that can be, all ACC caliber players this year and beyond. You got to buy those guys. And it does, at least right now, it seems like they've been reluctant to give those players money. I mean, I think the reported money for Gio Lopez was $2.1 million. So you've got the resources, but you're paying that to a quarterback that's making the transition from the group of 5 level. There's no guarantee he works out at the power conference level for UNC, where there have been guys at positions of need that have entered the portal that if you were willing to give them, some fat stacks, would have probably wound up in Chapel Hill, and those guys are going elsewhere. So, maybe the staff is still learning how to navigate the portal. Maybe, they're waiting on that house settlement to really figure out how much money they have to build the roster that they want to have. But regardless, man, if you want to come bring in the type of players you need, at positions of need, you got to be willing to pay those guys. And we can say so far through 4.5 months, it does not appear that's been the case for Belichick, Lombardi, and Carolina's front office.
Well, I thought in the fall window they did pay some guys. Like, you're not going to tell me that they didn't have to pay Thaddeus Dixon. You're not going to tell me that they didn't have to pay Kamori House. But it feels like as they've gotten into the spring window, there are big names that are in the transfer portal at positions of need, and it doesn't seem like they want to get in the mix for these guys. And the thing that's just blowing my mind is you spent $2.1 million on a quarterback. And again, are we 100% sure that you needed a quarterback this year? Are we sure that Bryce Baker is not the guy for this year? Because I'm going to tell you right now, if you spend $2.1 million on a quarterback and he gets beat out by Bryce Baker, that will be criticized heavily and should be criticized heavily. The fact that you were entertaining potentially going after Jaden Rashada, now that's off. He's not visiting this week, but you were potentially going to try to give him money. And we know that he's after money. He's literally suing Florida over the money that they didn't give him, that he thought was going to be promised to him. So I don't understand that. You're willing to pay at the spot at quarterback, which I get is the most important spot, but you're not willing to pay at any of these other positions. No, we have a cap that we're putting up. I mean, you've got to be able to flex that cap a little bit when it comes to some of these guys. You've got to be willing to pay some of these dudes. I know that you might not think that they're worth the money, But at some point, you can't just look at it as, oh, this is the number that we have on them. You have to stop being so stingy with the money, because that's what it feels like right now. It feels like we've got the money. We just don't want to spend it on this year's roster. But the thing is like you mentioned, how long is Belichick going to be here? Because we can bring up all we want about the NFL and everything like that. How long until retirement? This is a guy that is in his mid-70s. We're not talking about a young man here. So I don't understand why it seems like they are wanting to rebuild and play the slow game. And they're getting guys that are just depth pieces. They're willing to basically admit, it looks like, that they simply are not going to be a good team this year. Which is mind-blowing to me. I thought the goal when coming in was to immediately start to win. I thought they would be more aggressive. That's why you were asking for $20 million right out of the gate, was because we wanted to field a competitive roster. It just doesn't make sense what's going on with this group. And, in terms of the biggest holes on this roster, I mean, I know for me, there's three that I think need to be filled. Still, I think you've got the defensive line. Those defensive tackle spots are a disaster. I think you've got to get at least 1-2 guys that can contribute there. You've got to get one starter. You've got to get at least 2 guys that can contribute there. And you might even want to have 3 guys that can contribute at that spot, because ideally Rodney Laura would be a guy that is playing very sparingly. He was a guy that played sparingly in the bowl game last year. They didn't even really use him. So you're going from a group of defensive linemen that we at one point last year was basically 4 men deep. You were rotating guys in and out the entire season. And it allowed you to keep guys fresh. And now you're staring down the barrel of, you may have one legitimate starter, maybe one legitimate starter in CJ Mims. That's another guy, by the way, that is a group of 5 transfer that we don't really know how good he's actually going to be. And you're looking at having one of the least talented defensive tackle groups we have ever seen play at the power conference level. You've got edge rushers that, again, Price Yates is good. Who's the guy opposite of Price Yates? Is it Milcart Abu Jowdy, a guy that you're banking on coming up from the FCS level at Delaware? Or I believe they might have been FBS this year, but this was their first year where they basically set their own schedule and they really weren't all that great. I mean, you're banking on him coming up from basically an FCS level and taking over that starting job and being successful. You're banking on Smith Vilbert breaking out like we've never seen before, a guy that just finds a new school and all of a sudden becomes a stud. Those are 2 spots that I think Carolina needs to address. And then, again, I don't know where the wide receiver group is at. I have no idea. I'd love to know, because I still feel like that's probably a position of need. You need someone with experience there. And unless the guy that we're going to talk about here in just a couple of minutes, J.J. Jones, becomes available, it doesn't look like that room is where it needs to be either.
Yeah, no, I could not agree more with the areas that you say need to be addressed. You're talking about a situation where this defensive line might be like a group of 5 defensive line. And that spells trouble, because no matter the coach, no matter the scheme, no matter the system, it all starts up front. And what have we complained about the most in our 7+ years on the podcast when we talk about this Tar Heel defense? It's the lack of ability to win at the point of attack. I don't think this group is winning at the point of attack. Also, I don't mean to maybe speak bad things into existence. What's keeping Price Yates here? Like, is this not going to be a guy before the portal window closes where he reevaluates the situation? Maybe he can demand more money, or just go be like, heck, I want to win. And maybe realizes or feels like he can't do that at Carolina. So that's got to be a spot where I think 2 is at a minimum on that defensive line. I think 3 would be preferred. Just so, you need depth now just as much as you need talent. Like, usually you want talent first and then the depth. Carolina's in a situation where they need depth just as much as they need talent. Wide receiver you mentioned there. That was one of the reasons why I was bummed about Christian Hamilton entering the portal, because no, there wasn't a lot of production there, but you saw potential. You saw what he could be. You saw what he was capable of doing, and so they've got to be aggressive. I think targeting the right guys, because going after Gio Lopez, that was fine. That's one thing. The Jaden Rashada interest to me made absolutely no sense. Like, to me, I thought that was a complete waste of time and would have been a complete waste of resources. And I thought the whole part of bringing in Lombardi, bringing in, putting all the guys in the front office was so those guys could just go get Bill the talent, and then Bill and his staff coach up the talent. Well, they need to make sure they're identifying the right talent that they want to bring in here, because right now they don't have enough at positions that if they don't add to this roster in the next week or so, then I do think the outlook for 2025 will be a lot bleaker than what we thought it was going to be originally. And that's going to be a real I'm going to feel bad for the fans, feel bad for us, for all the people that responded, that bought in, that found a way to re-energize themselves, re-believe in this program after the disappointing end of the Mac Brown tenure. Like, for them to maybe not field a roster that can win 8 games in year one, I think you got to right as a Carolina fan to be disappointed. And unless they add to that defensive line, that linebacker room, and that wide receiver spot, I think that's very much on the table.
Yeah, even offensive tackle is a spot that they could use somebody else, especially after the struggles that we saw in the practice like a pro event. So definitely going to be interesting. We'll be watching to see what Carolina does in the portal here over the next couple of weeks. As the portal closes, guys that are in will then start making their decisions. Can Carolina find some help that can get them back to that spot where we feel like they can be competitive in year one, like we were expecting they would under Bill Belichick? You move to J.J. Jones. He had his hearing today, along with 3 former Duke players. And unfortunately for them, their injunction was denied, which means that they will not be able to pursue the lawsuit against the NCAA any further. That is, that really stings. We thought, anything that goes against the NCAA, typically you have a chance, but theirs getting denied in Wake County Court earlier today. That means the end of the careers for the 3 Duke players, but J.J. Jones is still awaiting his appeal decision. That should come down hopefully within the next couple of days. I mean, it doesn't really make sense for them to keep this going on, because if it is deemed that he is not eligible for another year at the college level, then they need to let him know, because he's going to have to then start calling NFL teams and try to get them interested in him as an undrafted free agent, because nobody is going to take him in the draft, unfortunately. It pretty much ruined his pre-draft process if this actually ends up being the case that he is not eligible. So, I mean, this thing has been dragged out long enough. Hopefully the NCAA has some sort of ruling. But here's the thing. How big would it be for him to return to this roster for Carolina? Because I believe that with the need at wide receiver, you bring back J.J. Jones, that gives you an experienced option. That gives you a guy that has been incredibly productive. I mean, he was your leading receiver in terms of yards each of the last 2 years. I think Tar Heel fans should be more than willing to welcome him back with open arms. What do you think about that?
Oh, I mean, it would be a tremendous addition to the roster. You could argue that, he was on the roster a year ago and would be granted an extra year. It would be right up there in terms of the biggest addition that Bill Belichick would have made since he became the head coach. I don't know, though. Does Bill Belichick take him back? Like, I mean, with the way that Campbell and Atkinson have exited the program, you could see Chapel Bill just saying no. We worked with this group in the spring. This is our group. But, I mean, if you could add back that type of production, that type of experience, I think, that's a leader that's a leader that this team could value, that this team could need. I think he's a guy that, even in this era of the NIL and the transfer portal, Like J.J. Jones loved being a Tar Heel, has enjoyed being a Tar Heel. You bring that back, be a good example for a lot of the young guys. So I wouldn't even think twice about it. J.J. Jones has been a guy that, from the time he committed, I've been a fan of. And then, while, he may not have scored as many touchdowns we wanted him to score during his time on the field, like you could count on that guy to show up every week and play his hardest and try to help Carolina win a football game. So I don't see how you could say no, but I would have also said a week ago, I don't see how you let Bo Atkinson and Amare Campbell get out of your program, and both those guys are gone. So it would not be a guarantee that he would be back in Chapel Hill, even if he was given the ability to play another season of college football.
Yeah, and he hasn't entered his name in the transfer portal. So if he, ends up, and it seems like this is going to be the route that he's going to go, it's either going to be he's going to return to Carolina or he's going to go to the NFL, and it doesn't matter. So, he might be fighting for an extra year of eligibility that he doesn't even need, because Belichick, I think if he says no, I think J.J. Jones is still going to end up deciding that he's going to the NFL, because he doesn't really want to play anywhere else. So to me, this is a guy that you should definitely take. You have a need at wide receiver. You need experience there. You need a guy that can be a little bit of a big play threat for you. We've seen J.J. Jones be able to do that for Carolina each of the last few years, and he would be a reliable guy for whatever quarterback comes in there and takes over. And that's the thing about bringing in a Gio Lopez to potentially start, is that this would work perfect. Gio Lopez has not worked with any of these receivers yet. So even if he ends up coming in, it wouldn't be like, well, we've been running, our potential starting quarterbacks with this certain group of receivers. They've gotten comfortable. They've learned these guys. We just feel like you could mess up the chemistry of that room. You're bringing in a new starting quarterback more than likely. And so I think that should certainly open the door for J.J. Jones to potentially come back into the fold if he gets that extra year of eligibility. It's like I've said, the one thing about him was the drops. He had some issues with that over the last few years. But I mean, when he was able to hold on to the football, he was Carolina's most consistent receiver. So I think that would certainly be a big boost. And again, we have no idea whether or not they would be willing to take him back, because we don't know what the status of that wide receiver room is. We don't know if that room is in good shape. We haven't heard anything. They haven't told us anything. So that wide receiver room could really be blossoming. You could have guys that are playing tremendous football in there, and that could be a unit where, we're not worried about that group at all. That's one of the best units on this team. We don't necessarily need J.J. Jones, but we have no idea. So just from an outsider's perspective, I would love to have him back. It's just a question of whether or not he will be back. Now let's get to maybe the biggest news of the day today, outside of Amare Campbell entering the transfer portal, and that is that the Tar Heels are heading for Dublin, Ireland to start the 2026 regular season. That's right. They will they will face the TCU Horned Frogs in the I forget the name of the classic that it is each year that they have, but I'm trying to pull the tweet up as we speak right here. But I mean, yeah, Carolina to open the season, that's going to be huge. The Aer Lingus Classic that they do every year over there. I know this year it's Kansas State, Iowa State. This past year, of course, it was Florida State and Georgia Tech. The thing that I really like about this is, once again, Carolina's in a standalone game. They're going to be by themselves. This will be on week 0, more than likely. I'd be shocked. I think this has been, played in week 1 a couple of times, but I think this is going to become the staple week 0 game for Carolina. And so this could be the standalone game for Carolina once again. And this is cool, man. You get to go overseas, expand the brand a little bit. You will have to pay some money in compensation to TCU, since they are taking away a home date for this. But I really think this is really cool for Carolina, expanding the brand. As Michael Lombardi said, wants to expand the brand nationally, but wants to also expand it internationally, and that's what Carolina is going to have the chance to do to kick off next season.
Yeah, no, this is really exciting. You know, this is usually the game that headlines week 0. You know, we saw this past year what happened with Florida State losing to Georgia Tech. And so Carolina in a standalone game. College Game Day now travels over there for this. So they will be featured on College Game Day, albeit it won't be in Chapel Hill, but they will be featured on College Game Day, which is, again, another boost. I think this really picked up steam, became a possibility with the Bill Belichick hire to get, assuming he's with the program in 2026, have Carolina on that stage internationally. Is something that would benefit the program. TCU, yes, is giving up a home date, but, I think they see the value in this as well, because this is a game that has become, it's well attended by, yes, the locals over there that have kind of adopted, football. But, I mean, also, like, this is something that you give your fan base a chance to a once-in-a-lifetime trip. And you don't really get to have a lot of those in football. Unless you schedule, unique home and homes, or you go to bowl games, in Hawaii or some of these other resort areas. Like, this is not something that, many Carolina fans would think was possible, getting to watch them play internationally. And now that's going to happen. So pretty excited. And it'll be a great way to kick off what we hope will be a great 2026 season. I've said all off season this year, that's really the year where I think Bill Belichick is targeting to win big and really, make his mark, at Carolina, in the ACC, and nationally. What better way to start that than, in a standalone game in week 0 in Dublin, Ireland, in one of the more unique atmospheres you'll ever play a game in. So pretty excited about that. That'll be a fun game to be a part of.
So now the question is, how big of a part do you want to be in the game? Are you at all interested in going to this game and taking the pod international?
No, absolutely no chance.
Dang, wow. I thought for sure. I mean, you got over your fear of flying. I thought this was potentially on the table.
I've got over my fear of flying over land. I don't know if I'm ready to fly over water.
Even though, let's be honest, wouldn't it be better to be flying over water? I feel like you've got a better chance of surviving if you crash over water than if you crash over land. That's just what my brain's thinking.
Yeah, now you're bringing in like two of my biggest fears: flying and the ocean.
The ocean.
The ocean is a scary place. I don't think man was created to be in the depths, in water. I don't want to tempt fate. I don't want to risk it. If we could build a bridge that can maybe drive us over there, sure, let's do it. You find a route where we can fly over land, sure, let's do it. I don't think that's happening. So, it's a great thought. Because this would be something that if we committed to it, okay, let's start putting back the money now so we could actually afford to go and enjoy it. That's a long flight, and I don't know if you want to deal with me for that long up in the air. My own father was embarrassed by me when we flew to Dallas. I can only imagine how you would treat me. So I hate to say it. If you want to go, you have my blessing. I think I'll be sitting here in the comfy confines of my home, sitting on my couch watching them play.
All right, so I need someone to go to Ireland with me. That's going to be the next task, is finding somebody that actually wants to go with me. So that's going to wrap it up, though, for this edition of the podcast. Make sure you head over to the website, HeelToughBlog.com. We've got everything up there for you. Any of the news that's going on around Tar Heel football, we've got you covered. The J.J. Jones article, I'm going to put that up tomorrow morning for you guys to be able to check out. But everything else is up there right now. Read more about the game in Ireland if you guys want to on the website. Of course, we have that article up there about Dayton Sneed transferring into Carolina. We've got the article up there about Amare Campbell entering the transfer portal, and plenty of other stuff if you go back through all of the different news tidbits that we've had. We've got some recruiting stuff, actually an article that I'm going to be putting up here shortly tonight that goes all the way back to the group that visited on April 11th. Who are the guys that we feel like Carolina has the best chance to end up landing when it's all said and done? And then another big official visit weekend coming up this weekend. So we'll be having you guys prepared for all of that. So plenty of stuff on the website to keep you guys busy here during this time of year when it has just been crazy. I mean, this is as crazy as it's been. I mean, we've got the NFL draft too. I haven't even been able to start looking at the NFL draft stuff, trying to put together where guys stand on big boards and stuff like that. So hopefully I'll be able to get that out to you guys as well. So again, the website is humming right now. So make sure that you are there. And guess what? The basketball portal is not done just yet. Ben Allen Lubin entered the transfer portal yesterday, but has intentions on returning. Carolina is also talking to another guy that is in the transfer portal right now, one of the portal's best players. So we'll keep you up to date on all of the latest happening on the basketball side of things around the transfer portal as Hubert Davis and his staff look to put together the best roster possible for this upcoming season. Not to mention, this weekend, we've got the big announcement from Drake Powell that will be coming down at some point. What is he doing? Is he staying in Chapel Hill or is he going to the NBA? We still have to figure all that out. So keep an eye on that website, HeelToughBlog.com. With everything that's going on right now, make sure you're checking it morning, noon, afternoon, and evening. Hell, check it noon and afternoon as well. Check it as often as possible so that you are up to date on all of the latest news. And the best way to do it, just go to the Facebook page, like the Facebook page, or go to the Twitter page. That's really the best way to do it. Give it a follow, turn on those post notifications, because anytime that we put up an article, you'll get a notification that'll tell you that, and you'll be able to pull it up right on your phone and give it a read. So that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the podcast. Make sure you go and subscribe to wherever you're listening to this edition of the podcast. Same thing for the Four Corners podcast, and make sure you keep an eye on the Facebook page for any of the other times that we're going to be going live, or the YouTube page if you're a big YouTube watcher or Twitter watcher as well. Appreciate all of you guys for tuning in to this edition of the podcast. Want to thank Josh for hosting with me, and as always, go Tar Heels.